Hello and welcome to this very special interview here on Paathshaala. Joining me today is a remarkable professional, someone who has more than 3 decades of experience in the financial services domain, and a better part of that has been in the now booming payment space. And at a time when we didn't use the word UPI moment. So, very happy to have you, Anup Nayar, who is the CEO, global CEO of domestic operations at Insolution, but of course, over his 3 decades plus career, has been at multiple places and has been a very key member of the entire UPI movement, much before most of us even knew what UPI is. So, thank you very much, Anup. Pleasure talking to you.
Thank you, Vivek,
The word
for having me.
UPI moment has now almost become synonymous with any big reform or any big success. And I've heard this word from multiple BFSI CEOs of late. But you've been a very integral part of this journey. So let me first ask you the question that how has UPI grown the way it has, and why has it grown the way it has? The fact that even globally now people want to emulate this feature, this product, whatever one wants to call it.
So, good evening, Vivek, and thanks for having me on your podcast. So, yeah, it's a great question. Yes, I have been fortunate enough to be a part of the journey of UPI since its incept. Um, UPI, the kind of volumes that UPI has seen, um, has been primarily driven by the fact that UPI brings about uh, the ability for a consumer to transact with another ecosystem partner without having to necessarily remember the complex uh, the numerals in terms of his bank identity and everything else. So finally, if I have, what UPI has done is has been able to bring about the transacting part of the ecosystem to one common ID, which we call as a UPI ID. So I can transact. Use. I just need to know your. I know your email ID. I just need to know your UPI ID, which is Vivek at whatever the bank name is, and that is, I think, is one of the most singular uh, event which has actually brought that kind of uh, of user experience, which is now cascaded back into the kind of voluminous and the fantastic growth that UP has seen for itself. Yeah.
Hmm. What next for UPI? We'll talk about UPI Lite, and you even unveiled another version of it at the recent FinTech Summit. But we keep reading about a lot of other nations, other countries. We, keep hearing accounts from a lot of individuals who've traveled abroad and said that it's far more easier to make digital payments here in India than in most developed countries. So, what next for UPI according to
The fact is, I think as an online payment system, UPI kind of is head and heels above the rest of the retail payments globally, and that's a stated fact. In fact, today a lot of countries are talking to NPCI and to the government to see as to how they can imbibe the success of UPI in their respective countries. So that is a given fact. I mean, that definitely makes us as Indians proud of the fact that we really have created a niche for ourselves in the retail payment ecosystem globally. Now, UPI through its entire journey, uh, almost 5 to 6 years, it is I've seen them kind of evolve uh, both in terms of features and in terms of end use cases. Yeah, and what we see is that today we had UPI, which with its multiple use cases to do multiple pay. I mean, you could do a typical P2P as a person to person payment, a person to merchant payment. We could do GST payments and a host of other use cases associated with UPI. Uh, One of the things that was always been an issue, especially with UPI, has been the fact that because of the fact that the ticket sizes on a typical UPI payment is low, which is almost 80% of the entire volume of business is between is around rupees 100 to almost 500 rupees. It's almost 80% of the business sits in that bucket.
Mm.
So they wanted to, and most of these transactions keep going back to the banking ecosystem, to the CBS, which is typically a very heavy duty tech infrastructure sitting with the banks and causing a lot of choke over there and also transaction dropouts. And this has been the bane of UPI for the large part of its entire journey. So one of the most innovative part which NPCI and the banks have brought together in the country, and thanks to the regulator, is that they have decided not to take the transactions, especially this low ticket transactions, back to the entire CBS, and they try to consume it within the UPI app itself. Yeah, and so effectively these transactions can be I can do transactions on UPI Lite, where those transactions don't necessarily need to go back to the banking system and they consume get consumed within my app itself. So that's one of the most innovative feature I thought which UPI has brought up. Recently, they launched a product which is UPI Lite X, wherein they brought one of the most significant functionalities where a transaction can be done on UPI using NFC as one of the options. Okay, which is near field communication. So effectively, I can do a transaction um, in a place where there's no network. Because typically UPI transactions you need to have a network around you. In this case, you can do a transaction without the necessity to have a network around you. So I think there's a game changer. It opens a different market segment altogether, and I think it is going to become a game changer in times to come. Yeah.
Could you elaborate a bit? I know as a tech person, you've already simplified things for all of us in the way you've explained things. But when you say it could be a game changer, and just a quick question, I mean, when you say no network required, would you say that somebody who is in rural India or a small town India using a 2G phone and does not have a smartphone can also use it now?
Sure. So let's look at a use case today. So today I go to a kirana wala. Okay. Now it can be in an urban pocket or it can be a rural pocket. So if I go to an urban pocket, presumably you have a decent connectivity and do a transaction. I swipe the UPI QR and I'm done with the transaction. That's a typical UPI Lite or UPI regular transaction. On a UPI Lite X, I go to a kirana wala and there is no network available. Yeah. It can be in tier one, tier two, tier three, you name the tiers, it can be in any tier. So there are black pockets in tier two, tier one locations too. And of course, there will be issues in tier two and tier three locations too. So I can still consume that transaction. So effectively, I can do a transaction between my phone and the merchant phone in a place where there's no network, provided both the payer and the payee are enabled on a UPI Lite kind of a platform. And so yeah, so that's the way UPI Litex offers. So even if there's no network, I can still consume the transaction.
And how would that
And
happen?
so, so I have an app on my phone, which is UPI Lite enabled. The merchant or the pay as a payer. The payee also has an app which is UPI Lite enabled. And between the two of them, we have a NFC or a near field communication or a BLE, which is functionality available. And I can just just enable my Bluetooth and I can consume the transaction. I can do the transaction. Yeah.
So it will require a smartphone.
Yes, yes, it will require a smartphone. Yeah,
And this
because
is what will
typically,
happen if you have UPI Lite X, as you mentioned.
correct, correct.
And by when do you see this rolling out in a significant way?
So UPI Lite X has taken a huge traction. The number of banks are increasing as we speak. UPI Lite uh, X will obviously ride on the same number of banks which are enabled for UPI Lite. All the banks, most of the banks and the partners for UPI would ecosystem would enable both Lite and Litex both, because it's in the interest of the ecosystem. Today we have some 300 million plus users who are unique users on UPI. So UPI Litex will, I think, uh, multiply this user base multifold. because it opens a different uh, segment altogether from a transacting standpoint.
And if I
So that's
already
where.
have the UPI app, do I need to download something else to activate UPI Lite or UPI Lite X, or does that happen? The option comes to me in any case.
So if I'm a UPI Lite consumer, okay, UPI consumer, I can, and if my bank is enabled for UPI Lite, I get it as a feature available on my phone, okay, and then I can do the transactions very seamlessly. And then
And that,
on top of Lite, then Lite X also is enabled as a layer. Yeah.
hmm.
So today most of the apps are enabled. So you have Beam, which is the mother app of you NPCI, which anyway is enabled, and so also will other apps like PhonePay, uh, Paytm, Google Pay, everybody get enabled.
Anup, how do you see, so the infrastructure is what is UPI, UPI Lite, UPI X that, you've been in various uh, positions been involved with creating. You talked about use cases from a shopping point of view. Say, I go to a Kirana store. But let's talk about, say, the financial services side of it. I'm not talking banks here because banks have a fairly significant penetration. But let's look at, say, insurance. Let's look at mutual funds. Let's look at equity, stock trading, broking. Uh, do you foresee that this could also change the game for these industries? Because while a lot of tech changes there have happened, I mean, from the time you probably started your career, I started around the same time, that we've come from where there was no online trading, there was no internet in this country. And from there we moved to online trading, we moved to a depository, dematerialization, mobile trading, etc., etc. But if you look at it from the point of view of being able to reach and enable people, uh, so you still have only about 40 million unique mutual fund investors in this country, and I think a lot of them haven't been able to be onboarded simply because of the fact that there is technology available, but they probably are either unaware or not being able to use it. So if you were to go beyond just a purchase of a product and into the whole service realm of financial services, since you've been a financial services professional, you worked for banks, etc., during the course of your career. What kind of a use case do you foresee that could happen?
Okay, so let's understand that for UPI Lite and UPI Lite X, we there's a limitation in terms of the ticket size in which you can operate. Okay, so typically it's a wallet, and you can keep around 2,000 rupees in that wallet. So whatever I do a transaction, okay, it has to be within the realm of 2,000 rupees. And typically the segments that you spoke about, yeah, are those segments where which have a larger ticket size. Yeah, mutual funds, for example. For that, UPI and its various avatars in terms of use cases, uh, there are enough and more use cases sitting over there. Okay, so there is no issue over there. Okay, and thanks to UPI, okay, the use cases that UPI has churned out for these segments, okay, the adoption of UPI in these segments has increased significantly.
Hmm.
Okay, you have standing instructions, you can do one time payment, you can do recurring payments, you can subscribe for your IPOs using UPI. Okay, in fact it's become mandatory now. So there are enough and more use cases sitting over there. For UPI Lite and UPI Lite X, the segment is those lower ticket sizes, and
Hmm.
that's one. And point number two is the need to do away with transactions going all the way into your banking system, which is your CBS, and basis which a lot of dropouts which are typically happen is completely taken care of.
Hmm.
So the segment for UPI Lite and UPI Lite X is in in that vertical, which has been 0 to 2,000 rupees. Yeah.
Hmm. But
For
people doing,
example,
say, 100 rupee SIP or a 500 rupee SIP could
yes,
stand
of
to
course.
benefit significantly.
Yeah, but then for that to happen, UPI Lite, yeah, it can happen. Yeah, of course it can happen. those,
Hmm.
especially those yeah, those low ticket
Mortgage.
size SIPs. Yes.
So globally, I mean, you are a company that is working both domestically. Of course, you had that part of it, but as a company globally, uh, what is it that you are now working on in terms of the payment ecosystem? What, according to you, you talked about Litex being a game changer. What else around it would you imagine should change for these things to really come up? Are there any challenges you're facing?
So honestly, as an organization, being a leading tech provider in the country, we work closely with NPCA and all the initiatives, both with NPCA and our partner banks. We have also a lot of footprint in international countries. Okay, and considering the fact that UPI has now become uh, international phenomena, as you rightly mentioned in the start of your podcast. Okay, we work with our international banks to see as to how we can, for example, we work in banks in Singapore. Okay, we work with banks in Middle East as to see how we can uh, take this platform, which where the relationship already established between NPC and the governing country or the domestic network over there, as to how we can bring the nuances of this platform to the respective countries. So we work very deeply in India with NPCI, and we use those learnings to bring those learnings back to the partner banks, back to our international banks.
What about cross-border payments? One keeps reading about, changes or reforms that are either have happened or are on the anvil, but, about, say, overseas Indians sending remittances through UPI in a more convenient manner, faster way. Uh, Today, if you see, there are lots of young people who are just sitting and providing their services overseas, and there are a few fintechs that have emerged in the cross-border payment ecosystem because even today it could take 3 days, 4 days for some payment to come from overseas. Do you see a strong use case there as well? And what's really happening, if you could tell us?
So remittance is a great segment. Okay, and we have to realize that that is also very heavily regulated segment. Yeah, but if you see, does does UPI have a play over there? Of course, the instant part of UPI itself is a huge appeal over there. The instant part of UPI is a very strong appeal. Now, obviously, NPCA has been working on that segment, okay, and has been working with international, a lot of players internationally to get UPI to be enabled for cross-border remittances. And I think if they're able to get the story right, okay, I think it would really be another game changer as far as international remittances is concerned, the kind of user because the kind of user flexibility it offers with the need to remember complex banking codes and stuff like that. I think UPI will really become a game changer over there.
Absolute pleasure talking to you, Anup. Thank you very much for making time out and explaining so many things in such a simple way. Thank you very much. Truly appreciate you taking your time out.
Thanks, Vivek. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. Thank you once again. Thanks.